Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 26. Chris, hey, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing okay physically. This week was kind of rough mentally. We can talk about that a little bit, but I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay. How about you? You had COVID. You have COVID. How is that going?
Yeah, I think today
Had.
feels like the first day where I feel back to like 85% energy. I was physically doing poorly. Man, we've talked about this before, but just physical stuff. If you're disrupting that foundation of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, nothing else matters. And I'll get into this later, but not having full effective breaths and also having just weird other symptoms of like allergies are much worse because it's sort of a thing that affects respiratory. Man, just everything else is off the table, and like all of my attention is fragmented, and that's starting to affect my sleep, and then sleep cascades into other stuff. I felt very delicate this last week of realizing this razor's edge that I'm balanced on, of this precipice of like so many systems have to be working, and they have to be working really well for me to be able to have full output. But even with that, I still pushed some projects forward, including some very unexpected projects. I kind of want to launch a Kickstarter now, but I'll talk to you about that later. That's what I got. You said mentally this last week was rough. What was going on?
Yeah. Last year, sometime last year, I sort of burned out. Not full on, but just kind of like I was sort of tired of stuff, and that's kind of why I stopped consulting and started my own projects and stuff, and that got me back, to a good place. This week, I took a very small consulting project with a company that I like. They are a small company. They just raised money. Their founder is super nice. And I started consulting, and they got me hooked up to Slack and GitHub and all this stuff. And I almost immediately said, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore." I didn't realize that before, but like all of the emotions of the end of last year came back, and I realized why I stopped consulting and why I wanted to do some of my own stuff. And that has me sort of concerned about, I know that I can consult and make money, but if I'm going to hate it, then that's not good. And also, like, this week was sort of busy family-wise, like nothing bad, just busy. Like, people had to be different places at certain times. And, like, I realized how much I've come to rely on the flexibility of not having someone, like, like not having a stand-up every day and that kind of stuff. So I was just trying to, like, mentally work out, I've had this in my mind that I can always back up, to consulting again. But yeah, if I really don't want to do it, if I'm actually burned out from it, and I didn't realize it until I started again, then that's not good. And so I need to figure that out.
Spooky. That's a difficult position to be in. I think I also have in the back of my mind that like the risks I'm taking in business aren't that big because I could always go back to working in a traditional job. But yeah, if going back to that, you realized that has a huge negative psychological impact. Like, oh man, that sort of means you don't have the safety net that you thought you did. That sounds very spooky. What if you could piece that apart a little bit more? Do you think what specifically about consulting do you feel like is causing the burnout? Is it lack of autonomy? Is it that you're in this structure of you have to work with other people instead of just doing it all on your own? What do you think is behind that?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out because I just had this week of feeling it. I liked the idea of working with people again. I think that was interesting. Autonomy wasn't that big a deal. Like, I was okay working on their project, but it was like, so I got hooked up to their Slack, and they have like all of the periodic jobs running in a channel. They have all the customer support coming in a channel. They have all of the like crash reports coming in on a different channel. And I saw those and I was like, oh man, there's a lot going on. Like I have not had to deal with this since my last consulting gig, basically. And I realized how much of a mental like tax that is to have that constantly on your side, like on your Slack. And I just realized how much more free my mind was when I didn't have that. And that got me thinking, like, well, do I really want to work on someone else's project and have to deal with all of this, mental burden for someone else's thing? And so I still haven't fully parsed through this, but I know, I felt burnout before. So the last time it happened, I quit my job and started consulting. And then it happened again in 2020, and I quit consulting and started doing all this stuff. So like, and it's not over. So, it doesn't mean I'll never go back to consulting in the future. It never means I won't ever get a job again. It just means that like right now, I don't think mentally I can do that.
Hmm. I'm curious about that feeling of overwhelm going into a Slack channel. I'm not sure that the logistics of this specific arrangement, but like, are you responsible in some way for all of these support tickets and the technical projects?
Yeah, no, that's why it surprised me. I could have just hid those channels, and I did. Like, I got rid of those channels. And so I still like, it's an irrational feeling, and I know that, but that doesn't help like the feeling go away. So yeah, it's something I have to think about some more, because like I basically just got over it. Yeah. So yeah, but now I know I don't want to fall back to consulting in the near term again. That's what I know. So
yeah. Well, I guess reason to double down on SaaS stuff.
You got to make some money.
Make sure you get something to work there. I'm reminded of I've never had a real job. I worked very briefly as a receptionist for my dad's medical office, and I did like an internship with a startup in California for a couple of months, and both of those were just soul crushing to me. When I was in California working for the startup, I gained weight, which is like not a thing that I do. I gained like 30 pounds. I was just snacking on peanuts and just hating my life, and felt really frustrated that I felt like the direction of the company was not one that I agreed with. I wanted to work on a different area of it that I thought was much more exciting. And I don't know how much I can say about this now. It involved Google Glass, and I believe retrospectively I had the correct position about the future success of Google Glass, and the company leaders did not. But that's up to interpretation, and I think if I was in the position of the leadership of that company, I would have acted in a very similar way. But I felt very frustrated that I didn't have the autonomy of being able to do what I thought was the best thing to do and sort of go off in my own direction. And through my life and following my intuition, like that's led me to really good places. So that feels like the correct thing to do. But where that's led me is like, I feel like I'm unemployable because like I was having a conversation with the people who run Riverside, because they were they had found out about the automated video editor that I made for editing this podcast, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, like we would love to hire you." And just immediately, my emotions and my entire body was like, "That's not even an option. No, you can't hire me because I hate that." And I think every strength is a weakness, and every weakness is a strength. I think there are attributes of a person that make them very industrious and very good at focusing and very good at like going down one track. And you know, you're given this Slack channel of these jobs that come down the pipeline, and it's your job to just work diligently and not really question and work forward, even if it feels kind of hopeless of like there is no end to this queue, that you can push forward in that. My dad is very good at that. My dad is incredibly industrious. He's very good at just putting his head down and doing that work. And I am not. And it's been very difficult in my life making the sacrifices I need to be able to work in a way that's in a way that jives with the way that I'm actually doing work, and that works with my temperament. So I relate strongly to your predicament.
Yeah, one of the things that frightened me so much about this was like, so in the book Drive, I think Dan Pink, I think is the author. Yeah, he talks about mastery, autonomy, and purpose, which you kind of talked about. And the thing with this is I felt like I had all three of those with this consulting gig, and I thought it was gonna be great, and then it just wasn't. And so that's kind of where I'm like, you know, I don't know where that puts me. So yeah, that was kind of my last week, and just trying to work through that still. Still haven't processed through all those feelings, but the thing I am really excited about is this AI competition that is still going on.
Yeah, we just got a week left, right?
Yeah, so a week left. And so next week, depending on when we record, it'll be just before or just after the deadline. So depends on when we record. But yeah, I'm in like 5th place or so. This is with my new process. And I'm back down to the score I was before. But this time I think it's a legit score. And the thing I talked about last time where people were like hand labeling training points, the Kaggle staff came on and said that's not allowed. And so it was kind of a fine line. All the top teams were doing it, and now it's not allowed. And so basically, like all the top scorers are like suspect now because like they were all doing it. So yeah, so basically all the teams chimed in on that thread and said, okay, we'll stop doing that, and they have to now submit scores. Like the rule is your final things you submit can't be, like if you do that, now it's against the rules. It's against the rules, and so you'll get like disqualified. And so yeah, so I'm in 5th place, but that's a legit score, and the ones above me may not be legit. So hopefully I know I will not beat the first place score. They have said that they are very close even without the hand labeling, and they are a meter better than I am right now. So I won't beat them, but I could get maybe 2nd or 3rd or 4th. So we'll see.
That's very promising. Oh, I'm so excited for you, especially having such a high score, like with knowing now that you're doing it legitimately, that you've gone through your entire process and cleaned it up. I'm very excited for after the competition to get more details on like exactly what had happened and get the juicy innards of what this algorithm was. But yeah, that is so exciting. How promising. Here's the question I think that is coming to my mind is like, what do you feel like is the important difference between working on this AI project and doing the consulting work? Presumably, both interesting technical challenges. Sounds like they both have mastery, drive, and what was the third one?
Mastery, autonomy, and purpose.
Mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Drive was not one of those things.
Drive is the name of the book. Yeah.
That's why I got confused. Okay. If you were trying to compare those two types of work, what are the important differences that come to mind?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Paul Graham has a great quote where he says, like, developers, they just want to write code and get paid. Or, like, they want to write code, like, they don't want to do the marketing and all the other stuff, or support or whatever. Kaggle is, like, the closest I've ever felt to that. Like, there's no boss, right? There's a leaderboard. Like, that's it. You write code and you go up the leaderboard or not. And that feels incredibly like it's like a meritocracy basically. Like you do well and you go up the leaderboard. So that's the only thing I can think of. Like I'm learning as I go, and so the consulting job was like it was just React, right? Like I know React super well, so like there's basically almost no learning that would be happening there necessarily. So maybe that too, but even that, like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I do it on my own schedule. I do whatever I want, and if I go up the leaderboard, I do well, and if I don't, then I know I've done poorly. And so yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure.
Is it the leaderboard? Is that the difference? If I added a leaderboard to your consulting job,
so there's something to that. Like I want to go up the leaderboard, right? I want to figure out what the other teams haven't figured out. But I think I would do it even if, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I would do it even without the leaderboard, I guess. It's just more exciting with the leaderboard. So that I'm not sure.
How interesting. I'll be chewing on this of what this could be. Is it that the competition is hard and the consulting is not? The consulting is just sort of like you could plug in any Rails developer and they could get it done. But you're exploring new territory with the competition?
So that's possible for sure. Like it's hard in a way that I haven't experienced before. I really love the style of programming that it is. So generally it's like, I do not generally like typical programming jobs where you like write a test for a spec that's in Jira and then you submit it and it goes through CI and and then it gets deployed. I really, really like cowboy coding, which is really bad for products, but really great for AI because like you do it and it either works or not, and if it doesn't work, you throw it out, and if it works, then you clean it up later. And that's something I'm really good at. And so I think it's partly that, like I have no tests, I have files everywhere. It's a disaster, but I'm still climbing the leaderboard. So that's part of it. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, So I'm hearing elements of mastery in that I may be misinterpreting what mastery is, but that it's something very difficult as opposed to something that's more rote that you write tests for it and it can be done by someone who wasn't necessarily as skilled as you. And also autonomy, that you're able to just do the AI project however you want with whatever method works. and there's a system and a formula, and there are more constraints in doing work for a bigger company. Is there a difference you feel in purpose? Is the purpose of doing the AI competition, does that feel deeper because now it's you proving that like you beat everyone in the world or maybe that's something deeper of like that the purpose of this competition is more important than the work that would be done for in consulting?
The difference might be like it's teaching me more things. I'm learning AI versus the other thing is I'm just doing React, which I already know. I actually think the purpose for the company is more important for the world than the current competition I'm doing. So like generally, like I think it'd be better for the world if I worked on the company than the AI competition, which is interesting. But like I guess personally, I'm getting more out of the AI competition than I would out of just a regular consulting job.
Interesting.
So yeah, I haven't worked through it all yet.
Sounds like if you figured this out, I would love to know what's going on, because I run into this all the time. I ran into this last week of like, I'm not working on the thing I think I should be working on. And if I can tease apart what those elements are of like why I find some types of work more interesting than others, I'd love to be able to further hack myself into going down the route that makes more sense in the long term. Neat. Any other updates in? You we're doing work in progress with Alex Hillman. What's up with that?
Yeah. So that we had our first meeting with that. So work in progress is basically I'm paying someone to keep me accountable. It's like a small group setting of people who are working on generally SaaSes, but other things as well. And we had our first meeting, like our intro meeting, and then they split us into groups, and those groups are meeting this week. So this week is the real kickoff. So yeah, I'll have more information about that, but I'm excited about that because that is getting me back towards SaaS a little bit, which I also still want to work on. So I'll have more updates next week, I guess, for that. Let's see what else.
I'm very curious, especially after this conversation, how that will fit into this mold of what's the work that you feel driven to do, and are there elements of working on this AI project that you could bring into this work in progress? For me, I joined a mastermind with the intention of that you're describing of wanting more external accountability, and it worked for a little bit, and then I realized, I'm not actually accountable to these people. I'm only as accountable as I want to be, which is something I just eternally struggle with. And so then it just became sort of like more of a fun check-in, and being able to talk to people who had perspective on the things I was doing. But oh man, I would love to crack this code of like, why are the things that are interesting to me interesting, and can I shape and mold that with a trick as simple as I just need a leaderboard. I just need to know that I'm beating other people at something. And
right.
If I have that, I'll go more in that direction. Yeah, cool. I'm interested to hear your insights in comparing these three different types of work and what you feel more driven to do.
Yeah, it's something I have to do more work on, especially now that I've had this experience and I need to like still parse what that means. So yeah, more of that. One last thing before we turn it. I am very close to buying a deep learning machine of my own.
Yes.
Google Colab. Yeah, I know. I'm to the point now where I'm asking like companies what their lead times are for these GPUs. So Google Colab was working great, except then I started a new Cal competition, one of the next ones. And this is more, so it's dealing with sound, but the way you process sound in AI is you turn it into an image first, like a spectrogram, and then you process it, generally. The problem was, so I had like 16 gigabytes of these images, and I had to get them to Google Colab. So I did that through Google Drive, and that's the way you do it. And the problem is the transition time between Google Drive and Google Colab is like 1,000 or 10,000 times slower than a normal hard drive. Like it's over their network, in some data center somewhere, and it took like hours to transfer 16 gigabytes. And I have to do this every time I start a new session. And so like it's just super, super awful. I cannot, like, I've looked online. There's like no good way to do this, and so I either have to make my data a lot smaller. You basically just can't do it.
Yeah.
So I either pay, I either pay $1 to $4 per hour for a spot, instance, or I just buy my own. So yeah, I'm working on buying my own. I'll do that probably in the next few days. I'm there.
Getting a potential hint as to what might be the real motivating factor behind work that you feel driven to do. It's just the work that lets you buy the more expensive toys. That's
right. I think this will be my most expensive purchase ever, except for my house and my cars. Will be this computer.
Nice.
Pretty sure.
It was like 20 grand, I think you were saying?
No.
More than that?
No. It's between 4 and 10. Between 4 and 11.
Between 4 and 10.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, where did
I will probably pick the app. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe this was something I was gonna buy. Good. That seems so much more reasonable now that I'm anchored at 20. Like, yeah, $4,000. Sure, yeah, do that.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like so much fun. I think this is now a reason to do it, and it's a reason to. It's a tool that would enable you to do work that you enjoy, and like of all of the other categories of ways that I've spent my time, meaningful work is consistently the most enjoyable. I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I was ziplining in Costa Rica. Like, if you could imagine a more exciting, more fun travel poster, I was in it, I was living it, and it was amazing. I'm going through, and it's like hundreds of meters above this beautiful forest canopy, and I'm seeing toucans, and I'm seeing all this kind of wildlife, and I'm zipping through the forest at like 60 miles an hour, and it's this light drizzle of rain, which slicks the line even faster, so the guides are saying, like, oh, we're going especially fast right now. It was just so much fun, and it's like all these carabiners and some technical stuff, and it was so much fun for like the first 3 times I did it. And then the 4th time I was like, okay, you do this and you get it, and I'm getting more used to this now. And then the 5th time I was like, let me try something crazy. And then I like lean back or like try to spin around. And then the 6th time I was like, I'm kind of done. And I'm only 15 or 20 minutes into this hour-long excursion. And so for the next 40 minutes, I'm just thinking about work again. I'm just thinking about programs I could be building and problems I could be solving on my computer. And like really consistently, that's been true of every way that I've tried spending my time. I think there's something to be said for like human connection and conversations like this I really enjoy, and like having deep conversations. So this I think is another category of a way that I can consistently enjoyably spend my time. But my gosh, doing meaningful work is just this infinite wellspring for me of when I feel most in flow, and when I feel most alive and most present, and when I feel the most purpose afterwards of that I've spent my time in a good way. So if you can spend money to be in that state more, I think that's the best you can be doing with life. I'm in full support of that.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Yeah. So hopefully it looks like 2 to 3 weeks is about the lead time for the GPU I want. So talk to me again in 2 to 3 weeks, and hopefully I have them, and it's exciting.
Great. You want to talk once a week, every week until then? Maybe record our conversations. Great. Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Neat.
All right. So yeah, that was all about me. How about you? What you get up to?
Meaningful work, the most important thing in my life. Doing that, and it sure is hard to do that when you can't breathe. Having COVID sucks. If there's anyone out there who is thinking about getting the vaccine and you're not sure because maybe it was made with fetal cells, and maybe it has some trackers in it that Bill Gates implanted, and maybe it's this new experimental mRNA vaccine. I've researched all of those issues in depth. I've had so many debates with my family. It's all bogus. It's fine. It's so much safer than driving in a car is. So if you drive in a car, you should get the vaccine. And my gosh, it would have been so much better to just have this over in a day and be done with it than this lingering out like, oh, it sucks. And I can't smell. And apparently I can't smell for the next like 4 months, and that's going to suck. It's very interesting, and I'm looking at the bright side of it. But like, would have been so much more preferable just to get the vaccine. If you're listening to this, please get the vaccine. If you have a reason not to get the vaccine, DM me. I would love to talk with you about that. I think it's very reasonable to have doubts. This is a very new thing. There are a lot of unknowns, and I have found myself, after exploring both sides, firmly in the camp of like, it makes so much sense to get the vaccine. And this is not something that I came dogmatically to. This is like, I have put my due diligence into this question. So I dealing with that and dealing with lower energy, something I notice about myself when I'm in these states of lower energy is that I become much more fragmented. It's so much harder for me to like pick a direction and just work on one thing and push that forward. And so what that turns into is I am just drawn in the direction of the shiniest, coolest project. And what that was this last week, I mentioned this a little bit in the last episode, is learning as much as I can about how to build tiny houses, which is so cool. And you can just build a house. Like, how cool is that? It's just wood. And found myself, I enrolled in 4 different courses, and I'm mixing and matching all the different information I'm getting from each of these courses and into a cohesive model that makes sense for me. In the process of this, found out that the way people build walls doesn't make sense. And there's this new method of building walls that would solve so many problems of traditional construction. It's a different way of doing it. The core difference, it's called the perfect wall system. I'll send you a link to this so you can include it in the show notes for anyone interested in building a house. The traditional way that you insulate a wall is to put the insulation between the studs in the wall. But that's dumb. And that's dumb because if you're cold, you're not going to stuff insulation between your ribs. You're going to wear one big cohesive jacket that's like this external layer of insulation. Also, now your waterproofing layer is right outside of the plywood that's in your studs. That's a very important layer, and now that's exposed directly to your siding. There's nothing protecting that water barrier. Now you're going to get mold in, and then the mold is going to go and find the insulation, and it's going to get moldy, and you can't access it. So things like that, and now that you're doing that, if you have all the insulation on the outside, you can do some cool things like have one entire cohesive, no-break water and vapor barrier and air barrier on the entire outside of the house, going seamlessly from the roof all the way to the foundation and then also under the foundation. So you have this perfect air-sealed envelope so that nothing can get in. And then you put the insulation on the outside of that, and then you put the siding on the outside of that. And it's really cool sort of taking this skill set and this mentality that I've been honing in software development of researching these tools and pipelines of evaluating, okay, React versus Angular, let's talk about that and which one makes more sense. And, the data flow of hooks versus the data flow of, having one global variable or something. I feel like it's honed my ability just to think about any sort of abstract system. And it feels really fun to apply that to a domain that I'm, as of 2 weeks ago, knew nothing about. And now I feel like I know more about building houses than like most house builders do. I don't know if that's true, but I at least have very strong opinions about the ways that houses are built. So I've enjoyed that very much. And I was reminded of our special acoustic caulk episode because one of the ways to be doing this vapor barrier sealing, especially for tiny houses, which move around a lot, was acoustic caulk. And I thought of you. So that was the area that took up the most amount of my mental energy this last week, is like picking up the skill of building houses. And I'm very excited to be building a house, a little tiny one.
That's cool. Yeah. I find construction really interesting because it's, in a lot of ways, it is like software development. You like put the layers up, and there's different ways to do things, and different builders have different ideas, and then there's new ideas that come out, and it's like, yeah, obviously it makes sense. So we looked at building a house before we bought this one, and we didn't. We bought this one, but and I kind of found similar things. It's like, why do you put insulation between studs? Then you have a stud that is leaking, you have wood leaking so you put the insulation on the outside. It makes a lot of sense, but it costs a little bit more money, so people don't do it. So that's super cool. You said you bought a bunch of info courses. What, have you learned anything about info courses that might be helpful in selling your own or building your own?
Man, so many. The checkout flows of all of them were bad. They have advertised that they have this thing that I want, and you would think, oh, I type in my credit card, and then as soon as I hit purchase, I have the thing, and the thing is right in front of me. And invariably, I go through the checkout process, and it says, great, you bought the thing. And I'm like, where's the thing? And I check my email, and in my email it says, here's a receipt for buying the thing. And I'm like, okay, but where's the thing? I bought the thing. And then I email support, and I'm like, hey, I bought the thing. Where's the thing? And they're like, yes, you did buy the thing. You should get an email about the thing. And I said, no, I didn't get an email about the thing. I'm looking for the thing. And I had 2 separate 5-day processes from the moment I bought the thing to when I actually got the thing. No, why are you doing that? And I was reminded of just like, onboarding is really important. And I am extremely guilty of this with File Inbox. There's a crucial step in my onboarding process that I feel embarrassed about that it's existed in this form for so long. File Inbox used to be only a Dropbox product. And so in my database layer, there's a lot of concepts of like, if the file has not gone to Dropbox, it has failed. And when someone, and that has since changed to like, you don't have to have it associated with Dropbox. You could also have it with Google Drive, or you could just have it, you access the files online or from email. And in my database layer, I still show that a file has failed if it hasn't gone to Dropbox. And I have some ways that I smooth that out later in the process, but when someone signs up initially for an account and they upload their first file, it highlights in red and it says failed next to it. But it hasn't actually failed. It just hasn't gone to Dropbox. And I was reminded of this 2 days ago. A friend of mine signed up for the site and was like, hey, I think your site's broken. And oh man, I just feel awful about that. And I think that's the same sort of mistake that these site info course people are making, of like, they just haven't experienced the product as someone going into it for the first time. And that's not hard, and it doesn't cost money. You don't have to like hire an onboarding specialist. I just need to go through the product again with the mentality of, if I didn't know anything about File Inbox and I just had the problem I was trying to solve of, I am trying to receive files, and I know what that frame is. I've talked to a lot of people who have that problem. And for these people with info products, if they're just going through with the frame of like, okay, I'm trying to buy my product because I want to buy this course, let's make sure that I can actually do that. That the problem gets solved so quickly, and it wouldn't cost any money. It's just like an exercise that you need to do. And I think I've had resistance to doing that just because it feels bad to find things to fix, because then I realize like, oh my gosh, how terrible is it that I've had this terrible thing that has caused people this strife? I am in the position of these course owners of like, I'm not delivering the value that is on the can that they should be getting. Also, there's an exciting framing of this of like, File Inbox has been making money despite being in this terrible onboarding position of highlighting files that were successfully uploaded in bright red and saying that they failed. So how much better will it be when I fix this very small problem? I'm limited a little bit in solving this particular issue because I feel like I'm right on the cusp of being able to do this integration of serverless, and like that's one of the many problems that I could solve by just integrating the serverless flow. And I think it would also be beneficial just to, remove the line of code that says that a file has failed. That doesn't need to be there. That would take me 10 minutes after this podcast. So I'm going to do that. And also this week, I'm going to integrate the serverless stuff that I've been talking about for months, Chris. Months. I'm just going to do it. That's one of the things I was gonna in these info products.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I was gonna say first, can you just comment that out and like just not show a failed message even if it is failed? That seems like a better experience for most people. I'm excited for the serverless stuff. Are you actually closer to getting it implemented, or are you? How is that coming?
I am mentally closer. No code has been written, but progress can be made without code. I was actually going to ask you about that technically, of just how you would approach this, because you have familiarity with like Vercel and React and also Rails, which those are the 3 pieces I'm trying to fit together. The specific problem I'm chewing on is I would love to eventually have this entire application on Vercel running serverless entirely in React. And a whole bunch of it right now is in Rails. And I would love to progressively move over of starting with just an upload page, and just the upload page is going to Vercel. And then maybe I also do the upload settings page and move that one over. And I would love to just be doing this like a view at a time. A way that I could do this, that is the way that I was thinking I was going to do this, is just to install React in Rails, and you can install Webpacker and have React views within Rails, and then you redeploy your Rails application, and then it's getting built server side and serves up, and then it can hydrate the views, and that works fine. That would be functional. The problem is deploying Rails feels painful. And it's not really, but like, I don't like the idea that all of these Docker images are getting redeployed on these two different servers, and like that feels much more clunky. And it just feels buttery smooth for me to deploy on Vercel. I just git push, and then there's the whole automated build process that happens. Where I would love to be in this intermediate term is to be able to make one change in Rails, and that's going to be a big clunky change that says something along the lines of like, if this upload page has this Boolean flag that says use the serverless method, then actually serve the Vercel app. And then while I'm iterating in Vercel, doing the serverless stuff, making my React views, now I can just be hitting those, I'll deploy that 20 times in a week. And then, okay, I've honed this well enough. Let's go into Rails and do this for another page, flip this Boolean flag, and then iterate in Vercel and get that deployed. How would you architect that? How might you, like, I could do an iframe, I guess, just have the iframe in the upload page pointed to Vercel, and Vercel could just be like on a different URL. Does anything come to mind of like an elegant way to do this?
I would avoid iframes.
I agree.
Yeah. So I've done it a couple ways before. One is like just deal with the Rails deploy for a while. That's one thing I could say. The other is like, is your Vercel app going to be only partially functional for a while, or is it like fully functional but you just want some views? Because what you could do is like send a portion of your users, like your new users, to the Vercel app, and all your old users to the Rails app. So you could split it that way, like even on different subdomains, for example. Or, I mean, I guess you could have different parts of your app be on a different subdomain, which points to Vercel. Like subdomains is basically how I might split this up. So you have like app and, I don't know, next or something. Dot fileinbox dot com, IO, whatever it is. Yeah. So those are the different ways I would think about doing it.
Splitting it based on, just splitting traffic. The problem I have is it's not fully functional, and I could just make it fully functional. That would be a perfectly fine thing to do. But it's things like, I have an integration with, oh my gosh, not RightMessage, the email sending app that Benedict made.
ConvertKit?
It's not ConvertKit. It's the one made for SaaS apps. Oh, I forgot the name of this. I have an integration with that, and that's an integration entirely in Rails. And so I would be in this weird in-between stage of, do I have another account with them? And now I have two separate user bases. It would just be... It would be cleaner to just do a clean cut and be like, okay, on this date and this time, I'm moving everyone over to this new system, and I'm just migrating the database into Firestore. And I would love to be able to do it page by page. Maybe the answer is just deal with the Rails deployments on React. That may be what I do. I really want to come up with a clever solution of like, maybe in Rails, when I'm serving a page that I'm transitioning over, I fetch that HTML on the Vercel site on the back end, and then just inject that HTML in the front end. So it's as if it's an iframe, but it's like a back end iframe. So the page that gets served looks like one cohesive HTML document.
Yeah, that would be okay as long as your like traffic wasn't that high and the latency wasn't that big between the two. But if the latency was high, then that would be bad. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what if I did this on the Nginx layer? A proxy pass is a thing, right? I can match a path, and then based on the path, I can serve a different URL. Oh, that might be it. That might be the answer. And then I'm just like very briefly hitting the web server, and then I don't need to do anything in Rails. Okay, well, I have several options. I think the answer is to push forward.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were using Nginx, which obviously makes sense. This is one reason I use Heroku for everything, because I just do Heroku push and it just works. So that's why I like it. And you have said before you do not like Heroku, which is, interesting. But
perhaps invalid. I use Doku, which is like a self-hosted Heroku, which my rationale for doing that is like, I can get much better performance for about between a tenth and 100 of what Heroku would cost for the same amount of performance. And it's functionally the same thing. I just push and then I get the same sort of build logs. But like the way I'm expressing this is it's not the buttery smooth process that being on Heroku would be. I think it would make a lot more sense to go on Heroku, and I'd be getting a lot of these benefits that I'm trying to get from having this serverless architecture just by using Heroku. And yes, it would be more expensive, but I'm paying for not being in this current state of anguish of like not wanting to deploy my app on Rails because it feels clunky. I think Heroku would have made a lot more sense, and if I just gone with them, I maybe wouldn't even feel pushed to do this whole serverless transition because I could just scale up Heroku dynos and have that be my solution to scaling. But
could
like
be. I mean, there's still
I want to do that.
Yeah, there's still problems with Heroku, and it is very expensive. So yeah, I mean, I get it.
Makes sense. That's where I am with that. I have one more thing I'd love to talk with you about. One of the projects that I have stumbled on in this process of building houses, I mentioned this briefly on the last episode, is ERVs, energy recovery ventilators. When you build a house with this perfect air-sealed envelope, which is where modern building practices are going, it used to be that people thought houses had to breathe. I was talking with my dad about when they built his house, and they were like, yeah, they were knocking all these holes in the attic and like intentionally making holes. And I was like, why are you doing that? And they said, oh, your house has to breathe. And then we found out like, that's a terrible idea because that makes mold, and your body doesn't have holes everywhere for it to breathe. You have your 2 tiny nostril holes and you have your 1 slightly bigger mouth hole, and that is the air for all of your body. And if all of your body could breathe, that would be bad because having the air intake as one centralized system, you get a lot of benefits of, you can have a mucous membrane and we can filter the air and we can warm it, and you can have the system specialized and like, this is where we take in the air. So that's what an ERV is. An ERV is a way to get whole house ventilation when you have a very airtight house. And then you can run it through a HEPA or a MERV filter. And now you don't have any allergens in the air. And you can balance it for temperature and humidity. So now, even if it's 98 degrees outside and very humid, you can run it through this special membrane so that it's doing a heat and water exchange with the outgoing air from inside. So now you're recovering like 85% of the heat and humidity from inside that would have been lost if you just opened up a window. I think these are so important, and I think everyone should have one. And I'm very upset that I only found out about them recently. And it got me thinking, these systems are very difficult and complicated to install. It was very difficult even to order one. I had to find, like, they sell some of them on Amazon, but they're bad. And to get a good one, I had to go to this random house site that I think is only used for building contractors, and the process of checking out through that was very difficult. And even with the one that I got, I'm going to try to retrofit it on a regular window, and I'm going to have to build like a special thing, and I had to get dryer vents, and I think I had to buy like a special power plug for this, and I'm going to have to do soldering. And it got me thinking, the thing that I want is just like a window unit that you just put in, and an ERV is this machine that takes 2 inputs from outside and has it's an input and an output outside, and then an input and an output on the inside. And so you could fit all of that into a window unit, and it would look very similar to like a window fan or a window AC unit. And then I just ran down this rabbit hole of like, oh man, I gotta have a Kickstarter for one of these. And I think what that would look like is I have a cousin who has a manufacturing plant, and so I think he could make stuff in plastic and could assemble a thing. And I think I could just buy computer fans as the fans that are driving this thing, and then find a source for this ERV core, and I design a thing out of plastic and have him mold it out of plastic, and then in his factory he can just assemble these 4 things of like the plastic case and then the ERV core and then the 2 fans, and throw a power thing on that, and then put that in a box with some styrofoam. And if I work out with him, what would that cost? I am good at video production. I could film a Kickstarter video and then set whatever minimum order I needed to make it make sense. I could say, okay, I have to sell $50,000 of these before it makes sense to me. So that's a project I'm sort of excited about. That seems like a terrible idea because, my gosh, how difficult is hardware. And it seems very important to be solving this problem for people because fresh air, I feel so different. When I have low CO2 air, that's one of the indoor pollutants that I think is being tragically overlooked right now, because any level above 1,000 ppm, parts per million, there are measurable cognitive defects. If you run a study and you put people in a room and you say, like, let me give you this cognitive task, and you have CO2 levels low, like at around atmospheric 450, they do great. And if you raise the indoor CO2 to 1,000, which doesn't take very long, it's just like a person in a sealed room breathing for about 30 minutes, they have a marked decrease in their ability to think. And that then has so many cascades, I imagine, of like health and mood. And if you just open a window, that solves it most of the time if the weather outside is good. But you're not going to open the window if it's too hot or too cold or too humid or too dry. So this device would be a solution to that. And I feel like it would make humans smarter and feel better. And I really want it to exist. And I don't really want to do it. I just want people to have this. What's your hot take? This seems like a terrible idea for me to do. I just want someone to do it.
Yeah, at the end there you said, I don't really want to do it. So I would listen to yourself.
Good advice.
Yeah. So it sounds cool. I know a couple people who have been involved with Kickstarters, and basically their thoughts are that hardware is so much harder than you think it is, even if you think it's hard. It does not, like, you will basically lose money on the Kickstarter, probably. It will take up all of your time for a year, probably. It will just cost more and take up more time than you think. And so I would say something like, if you really are super interested in this, I would make one for yourself and document the whole process of it, and then just try to sell an info product about it first. So like, $49, here's how to make your own thing or whatever. You will learn very quickly if you are able to market that to people and actually get them to buy it, and if people are interested, and how to reach them, and then you'll have an email list and all of that stuff. Then if that all goes very well, then maybe do a Kickstarter. But yeah, I think people jump into Kickstarters thinking it's going to be like it's cool, they can make this hardware thing. And I don't want to discourage anyone, but it's going to be like way harder than you think it is, even if you think it's hard. Yeah. That
is such good advice. That makes so much more sense than doing a Kickstarter. And I know even exactly how I would do that. I would prototype the device for myself, and then I would make CNC files to just be able to cut out the right size box. And then I would have a parts list of, like, get this computer fan and get this cable and get this ERV core. And you can get those cheaply from like Alibaba.com. And then here's how you assemble it. And I have a video of how you assemble it. That makes so much more sense than what I was going to do, because that's, 90% work I was going to do already. The only additional work is host the CNC files on Thingiverse and record videos of how I put it together. And then I can sell the design on Thingiverse. And then I can be making the $50 I would be making at the end of selling a physical product after I've paid for like manufacturing and shipping and everything else. And then in the case that this is actually helping people, like, yes, it's going to preferentially help people who can CNC their own thing and are more maker DIY people. But that's sort of what I want. I want early adopters to get this first. In the case that, like, that's successful with the DIY crowd, great. Okay, now I'm in a very good position where I have this built-in audience. If I wanted to pre-make one of the devices, I could even start just by like pre-making the CNC'd like homemade devices and saying, you can buy my plans for building this for $50, or I'll make one for you for whatever it's worth my time to do that, of like $500, and then you don't have to go through and do any of the parts. And then once I've done that, and these all feel like very manageable little baby steps, then I can start thinking about, do I more systematize the process of building the physical device? Yeah, okay, that's great advice. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Thank you. You talked me off the edge. Cool. Starting a Kickstarter. That's a terrible idea.
It's funny because I've had the same thoughts about lots of different things. It's like, oh, it would be awesome if I did this, and I just don't think about the realities of like, oh, that's going to take a year and a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
I have someone who
I'm excited to see it. Whatever you come up with.
Oh, thank you. I think it's going to meaningfully improve my life. Yeah, in the worst case, like I will have just made a good one for myself, and I'll have a way to make more of them for any of my friends who want one. I'll give one to like everyone in my family. Yeah, And then, if I can help anyone else with this, I'd love to do that. Yeah, cool. That feels good.
Cool.
That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I will see you next week. Goodbye.